Hey journalists, this is Crazy Nate, and this is the Late Nate Show. And I found a video the other day when I was looking through my library, and it was from when I went to D23, and I thought you might want to watch it, so I'm sharing it with you. This is from the movie Moana, which I'm sure you've seen by now, and this is some of the commentators. Kyle Odermatt and Marlon West are both part of the effects department that made the movie, and this is basically them talking, explaining some of the cool things that they had in the video and how they got to where they're at. And I'm sorry that the video was a little bit shaky. I tried to fix it in post-production as best as I could, but basically when I went to D23, I read all the fine print about where you could and couldn't film, and I played by the rules, but when I got there, virtually everything was a you can't film scenario, even though online it said certain things you could film. But anywho, this is one of the few things you could film, and by that point in time, I didn't have my tripod anymore because I figured I won't be filming anything. So it was me holding the camera as steadily as I could. So sorry, it's shaky. But hey, if you're a nerd and you want to see all the stuff, or you want to become an animator someday or something like that, this is some cool information to find out how they made the video. So here you go. Hope you enjoy. Bye!
Hey everyone.
Hi everybody.
It's so cool to be at D23 with all of you here. I know you're all big Disney fans. We're big Disney fans.
Indeed.
And we're thrilled to get to talk to you about Moana and some of the amazing effects work done by Marlon and his group. So I'm Kyle Odermatt, the visual effects supervisor on the film.
Yeah, I was the co-head of effects on the film myself and Dale Maeda. Before that I was working on Frozen, also with Dale Maeda.
So we're going to talk to you about a few things today. So when we embark on one of these films, there are many things that we discuss with the directors about what they want to see achieved in the final film. Many of those on any given film are things that we don't know quite how to do. So that's where we get really excited because we're problem solvers at heart. On this film, there were a ton of things that we needed to figure out how to do. This film was chock full of not just effects, but character challenges. You saw some of that up there with the integration of 2D and 3D. So a really great project for us because there's a lot of meaty challenges to go after. When we talk about technical challenges though, we have to point out that really that is just in service of the creative art. So we just have something we want to do and we have an idea of how we'd like it to look. So then we need to make software, tools, techniques to be able to achieve that. We're going to talk about three areas today related to the amazing work of Marlon's effects group. We're going to talk about how we accomplished water in the film, which took on many forms. We're going to talk about how that water came to life as an animated character. And we're also going to talk about the lava character, Te Ka, who I saw wandering around here somewhere. Cool costume, amazing. I never thought someone would try and pull that one off, but it's a very good job. So in our earlier conversations with the directors and all our conversations with the research we had done with the Pacific Islanders, it was very clear that we needed to get water right for this film. So we tend to think of water as a barrier from getting from here to there. For them, it is actually a connective entity. It is the thing that binds the islands together. They really think of no disconnection between the land and the sea. So we needed to make sure that we could evoke water that was that you would think about in that same sort of spiritual way if possible. In order to do that, we came up with an entirely new way of simulating water. We called it Splash. It used the best of both worlds of two techniques that existed out there in the marketplace. One of our developers in technology had an idea of how he thought he could get these things together and give us a real leg up on what we could accomplish. And it turned out to be a real secret weapon for getting this film done, for amazing shots like this. Here you can see the results of that simulation in a kind of a rawer form, some of the ways we look at it as we're working on it in progress. One of the big challenges we had is we knew there were going to be a tremendous number of shots of the boat on water. And so you're solving multiple problems when you need to make that look correct. You have the buoyancy of the boat, making sure it's like it's floating on water properly. you have the way it's pushing the water out of the way to create those big bow wakes, and the weight coming off the back. So we needed to have all those things working all simultaneously in the middle of the vast ocean, and that was, we were going to do that so much that we decided that we needed to attempt to automate as much of that as possible. Here you see just a cross-section of a boat cutting through the water. You see that the boat is acting properly buoyant on the water, moving up and down, and spreading apart the water and creating the wake behind it. When you look at that from top down, you see that we've cut out a circle of water out of the main ocean.
The lighter area there.
The very first thing we would do for any given shot or sequence is determine what properties for the ocean we wanted, dial up the number of waves, the height of the waves, for the mood of the scene. So that established the look of all the water, and then we would cut a piece out of it, like you see here with this circle. We would run that part and the boat through our simulation system, Splash, and then get a pleasing bow waves and wakes and all the little splashes. We then have the challenge of integrating it back into the whole, back into the rest of the ocean, which you see here. And that one took us a number of months to figure out how to get that to look right, so you didn't ever see that seam. Now I'm jumping back a few months. This is a test from pretty early on, probably a year and a half before the movie came out. And if you look really closely, guys, some of you are far away, but here we had cut out, rather than a circle, we had cut out a square of water, a cube of water. And you can see where it turns green on the edges. That's because the seam there is not properly executed. So we had not gotten that blending working. But we knew what we had to do, it just took work. So here we see a test from later. And not only do you see that we don't have any seam now around that simulated portion of the water, but also the lighting group has gotten their hands on this as well. Everything we do is a process where collaboration is incredibly important across the multiple disciplines of artists that work on these films. So the artists working in lighting knew that we wanted this much more saturated look for the water, so you see that difference between the last test and this one. Now, you can tell this is a test because if you watch Moana, she's doing a little bit of Aladdin's genie kind of thing up and down on the boat. So not everything was working, but it was real promising. So this is not an exciting shot of the ocean or the boat wake, but a critical one. So a shot like this, you needed to generate a wake that was reasonable, just so you didn't miss it within the context of the shot. So this system that we built to automate these shots allowed us to do this with little or less pain. I think our initial goal was to hit, if this system could have done 50% of the shots just right out of the box, that would have been fabulous. I think in the end it was more like 20 or 25% of them, but even those other 25% just needed a little tweak by an effects artist to get it to work. But it was really that foundation work that the effects department had done, our technology department, and getting this all working, very complex system, but really allowed us to spend our time elsewhere on the real big effects in this movie. And I know you've probably all seen Moana, and there's a lot of really big effects in the movie. So we have the open ocean water, but we have then all the conditions with water as they are near our islands. We have the reef break, which I'll talk about in a minute, and we have shot after shot of these beautiful beaches with water lapping up on shore. And you know, when we go to the beach, we don't think about the physics of it. It seems pretty straightforward. Turns out this one was another challenging problem, because if you'll notice, you see the water coming up, it leaves damp sand behind. That damp sand dries over time, and all the little interactions of the waves, it becomes very complex. So here we have a sort of a more important shot of the interaction with the waves, and a shot like this is broken down into many, many different parts. So all these colors represent a different piece of the water problem. So we have our deep ocean water out there in blue, we have our lagoon water in the turquoise, yes, good. Then we start to get into the waves at the shoreline, and you can see the yellow being that damp sand look that we would want to apply. So we gave lighting all these different pieces so that they could tune the shots in the end so that they had that beautiful, incredible look of islands in the South Pacific. If anybody's been there, it's just something, I was there 21 years ago, and boy oh boy, I can still remember walking and wading out in that water and just how amazing it was. So we wanted our audience to feel that very same thing as they watched the movie. So I mentioned the reef break. So one of the things we think about when we're solving a problem is how contained is the problem. Simulating a wave that's breaking on a reef can go on for half a mile, hundreds and hundreds of yards. So we knew that this was going to be particularly challenging. When we discussed early on how we might go about achieving this, the developer for Splash said, I think we can probably introduce distributed computing. Now, distributed computing is the ability, it's a modern thing about being able to apply one big problem to many individual computers to solve. So what we see in the simulation on the left that looks like a perfect simulation, it was calculated on some number, 4 or 6 different computers. Now each of these takes a piece of the puzzle, figures out their piece, and then says to their friends across the way, hey, this is what I figured out at the edge. What did you figure out at the edge? And those two resolve that, and then go on to figuring out more about their chunk of water. So adding this gave us the power to do a huge, long breaking wave like this, but compute it across 8 different computers, which gave us all the fidelity we wanted. We wanted very small particles of water, but then it becomes billions and billions of particles, and either incredibly long to simulate on one machine, or maybe impossible if we can't make a machine big enough. This allows us to get a result back far faster, and that is one of the things we need to do all the time, is iterate. So we use this technique of distributed computing in Splash on lots of the shots after that. So all the big ocean waves during the storm. Because you want, again, hundreds of millions, billions of particles to be able to do that. One of the things that Marlon and his team brought to this film was an idea that's been floating around our studio for a bit of time about doing a library of effects. So going back a few films, the effects team would have generated stand-in effects. Those can be placed in layout, and you know there's going to be a splash there. It would just look like a blue set of points. Not at all like what it would end up with, but you could have the idea of what it was going to become. A placeholder, really. On this film, we took it to the next step. Marlon's team created full libraries of 3D effects in the round that will go to final rendering. So layout could place them and retime them. Animation could retime them additionally if necessary. And then these could travel all the way down our pipeline and get rendered in the lighting department and look amazing on screen.
And we brought about 8 animators on, effects artists on, for about 13 weeks, just creating splashes, things we would know we would need, plumes of smoke, fog, stuff that we knew was going to be in the film. And all we had was like Moana or Maui standing next to it. We always showed them over black. And our directors and production designer were willing to take a leap of faith with us and go like, yeah, that looks good, without it actually being in the shot at all.
I'm not sure if you can see it, but that's Moana right there.
Yeah.
So those are big splashes. Here's one more set. This is the water spouts like they have at some of those amazing beaches where the wave goes in the lava tube and then comes out as a geyser.
Yeah, there's Moana.
And we have great footage of our directors there getting totally drenched as they didn't anticipate properly the water spout. We still laugh about it today. But we were able to use things like that in shots very easily, very straightforwardly, because all the work had been done up front. I'm not sure, did this shot use any input from an effects artist?
Yeah, actually I did the interactive splashes. So Layout was able to put those foundation effects, all the water spouts, and then the character animator who animated Maui was able to animate the spouts to go off when they wanted. them to hit Maui, and then I just did interactive splashes that kind of supported his motion as they splashed out.
But really, the bulk of the scene, even in the early phases, before it got to the effects department, you could tell exactly what it was going to look like. And that's one of our challenges as well. We always want to satisfy the directors, but we need to be able to show them something that they can react to so that we can get the proper notes back. If something, if what we show them isn't what they like. Many problems with early CG, and our directors, Ron and John, who were more familiar with the hand-drawn pipeline, was they weren't quite sure what they were looking at. So effects creating these foundation effects that look great throughout was a big breakthrough. They did other amazing things up front before the sequences came through, like this huge foundation effect of the waterfall covering the secret cave. And sometimes they feature as a very small piece of a shot. So there's some little splashes and so forth in shots like this that are just hand placed. I think there's one here. You can see one splash right at the tail end there as the Kakamora is in the water. That was just pulled from the library by the animator because they animated when the Kakamora was going to go in the water, placed that splash there. That was it. Effects didn't need to think about that piece of it at all. They just had to think about the massive water scene or these crazy,
all those other effects.
The crazy Kakamora barges.
So having all those foundation effects around allowed us to be able to do shots like this, you know, where there's really kind of big water interaction with the characters in the environment.
I think the number that I recall is that we used 30,000 instances of these foundation effects. So they're throughout the film and really made a big difference to allowing effects to work on these other massive shots.
I might still be working on Moana right now, had we not done those in advance. So another big challenge, both creative and technically, was the ocean as a character. Kyle talked about the fact that in that part of the world, the ocean, the water binds these islands together, connects the community. And when our directors were there, kind of on a research trip, we went out with a navigator out in the ocean, and one of them can't swim. I won't say his name, but his initials are Ron Clemens, and he famously cannot swim, so he asked for a life preserver. And the captain of the boat he was on is like, "You can't have a life preserver. If the ocean knows you're afraid, it's not a good thing for any of us." And two men who actually made a living carpet in Aladdin, you tell them something like that and you immerse them into a community that really believes that the ocean has an emotion and needs to be respected. It doesn't take much for them to come up with an ocean that is a very helpful character in the film. But how to actually realize that, how to give it a tool to the character animators and have it be a believable water effect was one of our big challenges. So we created this rig, kind of almost like a sock puppet that we actually gave to the character animators. And they would animate it. Adam Green did this one, and he's actually got two. He's got the one that's putting the flower in Moana's hair, and then he's actually used the sock puppet a second time to emulate a wave that scoops her up. But that doesn't look like water. So what we would do is add simulated water over top of their character animation, and we'd fill that character up full of liquids and bubbles, like if you were to take like a plastic bag and shake it really hard, it would have a lot of bubbles and stuff in the inside. So that's what we would do with the animated character. So my co-head of effects, Dale Maeda, did this shot. And one of the things we did kind of throughout the film, and these are the kind of discussions grown-ups have in my building about like how long the water character stays water. Like once it does its bit of business, it just kind of turns back into water. So that was one of the little rules that we had, like the water as a character wouldn't have to lower its head back down. Once it does a nod, it just turns back into water. So that's kind of what happens once it puts the flower in Moana's hair. Adam animated the character all the way through, but once the main business is done, we just kind of let the physics take over and remind you that this is the ocean again. Again, here's a high five with Moana in the ocean. And you see the ocean goes all the way out, comes up, goes all the way out. Here it is. And so you can see there, after the bit of business, we turn it back into just regular liquid. Just let the water just kind of fall out. And here's the shot and final lighting. So like out on the open ocean, we were faced with the challenge of actually stitching the character back in. So here's the ocean kind of doing a little bit of a head nod towards Moana. This is like a little cutaway. And then our challenge was to stitch that character animation back into the ocean, the rest of the ocean. And again, once the head nod is done, back into just regular water. It doesn't duck its head back down. And here it is. So it was really important when we made this film that this was the ocean interacting with Moana. This was not a water creature that lived in the ocean. So it was very important to actually give you all these cues that this was in fact the ocean itself, that it was actually just taking a form and falling back into its natural state. Sometimes it had to be actually rather big, but that were quite menacing. So it was very important both in the character performance, not to have it move very threatening.
We were lucky enough to actually present at the Toddler test portion of this sequence at D23 2 years ago. And the reaction to that, both from our internal leadership and from the audience here, was so fabulous that even though the story at the time did not have Moana meeting the ocean as a toddler, there was a strong discussions about how we could rejigger the story to make that happen, and that's what's in the final film. Originally, at the time, she was going to meet Moana when she was 16, and we just didn't think it would have that magic that it does with the toddler.
And this is that final shot, kind of stitched back into the ocean. So another character, both technical and acting challenge, was the character of Te Ka. You've seen the film. I won't spoil anything. So Te Ka is a character that has a very complex emotional range between being angry and very, very, very angry. So we had a lot of things we would have up our sleeve as artists to kind of support what Te Ka was. So Kyle talked about the foundation effects. Here's a foundation effect we did really kind of early on. And very often, what we do at feature animation is not stuff that's actually realistic but believable. So how do you make the ocean believable when it's animating? And how do you make a living volcano believable? When you actually give it the attributes of a real volcano, you give it fire, you give it lightning, you give it lava. And in some of our research, we realized that very often, like, volcanoes are their own little climate, little weather system, and they have lightning and they have rain. So we gave her those things to Te Ka, and when she went from angry to really, really angry, we used more fire, more lava, more lightning in this case. So that was a particle simulation, and this is actually an early test we did a couple of years ago. The kind of billowing smoke and lightning. So this is a shot from the film of Te Ka. Typical, rather annoyed. She's got flames, she's got a lot of lava billowing from her, dripping lava, interactive splashes with the water when the lava falls into the ocean. This is a pretty short shot, but there's a lot of information we needed to get in there. So Mark Bryant, who actually was in charge of Te Ka for the effects department, kind of did this little breakdown. So you can see all the different elements, effects elements that go into making just one Te Ka shot. So some of these effects were specific to the shot, the lava dripping from her body as she moves, the smoke billowing from her hair as she moves. But some of these foundation effects we did like months before. this smoke that billows out right there, the little splashes, or little foundation splashes, those are the same ones that actually Kyle was showing you a little earlier. And those are the things that kind of let us have a lot more production value than we would have had if we had to do all of these shots by themselves. So one of the unique things about our studio is we have this tradition of hand-drawn animation you may have heard about in the past. And there's a few of us that come from that. I started on The Lion King, and so I did a bunch of paintings of Te Ka. I would call them paint-overs because this is actually a rendered image, and the Te Ka animation is actually how it would come out of character animation. But I tried to do a key drawing of all the effects that would go into each Te Ka shot. That way I could show the directors, I could show our production designers, and I didn't, there was this fear of like having Te Ka look like a wet paintbrush all the time, like she was dripping lava like all the time, every time she was walking around. So to try to like augment that, it was like, well, I just did a drawing just to say, she's got lava dripping in this shot, she doesn't in that shot.
We actually like to use hand drawings and paintings, sometimes on a digital equipment, all throughout our process because it still is one of the fastest ways to give visual feedback. So in every one of our review rooms, there's a monitor that you can draw on, and anybody will go up there, a director or someone else who has an idea, and just quickly sketch out what they're thinking and communicate it to the whole room. We find it really, really effective.
Very good way of communicating. So this is Te Ka shot. This is one of the early shots of the film, and this has foundation effects that were placed by layout, and actually some of them moved around by the character animator. And these are the effects, the same shot with the effects specific. Just Te Ka's hair coming on for the first time, lava dripping off, specific smoke that actually is related to her performance. And even though it's not perfect lighting in here, this is the final lighting for the film. This is actually how the shot appears in the film. Here's another one. So the kind of white smoke that kind of looks like steam coming off of Te Ka, what we did was we created a rig that the character animators could use so they could actually see the smoke that would come off of Te Ka based on their movements. Because we had this challenge with Te Ka. It was like 300 feet tall, and we didn't want to do the usual tropes that people do when they try to make something look big. It's like, so we wanted Te Ka to be fast moving sometimes. I think they used a lot of reference of like elephants and giraffes, animals that take a lot of energy to get moving, but once they move, they can move pretty quickly. So we wanted that with Te Ka, but we also wanted to suggest the limits of what smoke physics can really do sometimes, so they could root her performance in reality. Here it is, the final lighting of that shot. And I like showing this one, because this is actually the first shot that after, I don't know, more than a year of trying to figure out who Te Ka was as a character, how we were going to do it. This was the first shot to go through layout, animation, effects, lighting, and when I saw this was just like the first night, I got like more than 4 hours of sleep in about 6 months. So this is a favorite of mine. Another challenge of the effects department when you're working at Disney or in an animated film is that the character performance is actually very important. So even though this is actually a big tidal wave and a mountains exploding, you don't want to lose Te Ka in the scene. You don't want to not be able to see what's going on. So we were very careful to actually not put water, not put a lot of rocks and lava and explosion things over the face of Te Ka anywhere in the sequence, in this shot. And here's another example of rough effects. This is one where Te Ka actually throws like a lava ball. It's like a 16-inch softball right now, but eventually in the movie, it's like a lava bomb. So we would show this to the directors to make sure that's the right amount of destruction. We don't want to go destroy too much or too little. So before we actually finish the whole shot, we would show this. This is still coming out of the effects department, but this is close to what the final effects of the film would look like. And once again, like Te Ka is on screen for like less than a second. There's still like several layers of effects. You have to be there just to make it look believable. So that's another reason those foundation effects work really well.
One of the things Marlon has touched on a couple times is how important the effects work is to the storytelling. So this film, I think, took that to a new level for us, where without the effects, if you imagine Moana without the effects, you can't tell that same story. And just the intricate way that there's interplay between characters and the effects, again, gets back to that notion of collaboration. There had to be a lot of communication to be successful when multiple people are working on the project under tight deadlines.
Yeah, this was like a high watermark for both effects and collaboration in our studio, because there was several challenges that no one department could do by themselves. Couldn't make Te Ka, could not do all the water. And I think that may be the last. Oh yeah, here's another. This is another big challenge, which actually also kind of where the distributed computing came in when Te Ka, when Moana, the ocean opens up for Moana.
With each of these, we are, thinking about whether we can actually achieve it. Do we have the resources? Do we have the time to get through all those simulations and the long renders that would be afterwards? So Marlon and his team were always looking for clever shortcuts to be able to accomplish the scene in a way that would still look fabulous, but be easier to achieve. So they came up sort of with modular pieces of water that they could connect together to be able to compose that trench in a way that it would work for the different needs of the different shots.
And even though you can see an animator kind of moving it around, once we kind of put that trench in there, it was really kind of important that Te Ka didn't go through it, or we didn't kind of cheat it. So it's actually very important that actually we kind of stay honest to that space.
Good. I think we have time for maybe quite a few questions if anybody has one. There's mics going around up front.
How did you get the idea to create Splash?
Oh, no, he was asking how we got the idea to create Splash. The ideas for our films, they start pretty early on. So like back when I was working on Frozen, I was looking ahead at like, what do I want to do next? Like I see Moana, and water's very hard because everybody knows what it looks like. Like a lap baby will go like, that water looks fake if it's not right. And so we knew there was going to be a big challenge. So just as I'm looking ahead as a creative leader, our software department's looking ahead and they can see the challenge of it. So we look around and we see what's out there that what can be done already with packages that we can buy, and we see the limits of some of the tools we have that we create, and we kind of are motivated by those things. We couldn't do exactly what we wanted to do to get as many water shots as we needed. Moana was like hundreds of them. In the typical animated film, there's maybe a couple dozen, and we knew we had to do hundreds. So that was kind of the reason that we knew it needed to be.
And I think I may have mentioned that there were two existing techniques out there. Each of them had limitations. They could do one part of the puzzle, but not the whole puzzle. And so we thought we were going to get into a problematic area where we would encounter shots that needed some of each of those. And as we just even verbalized this, one of our developers that was the primary developer behind Splash said, I think I can combine them in a way that would allow you to have the strengths of both. Any kind of comment like that when you haven't done it is just, there's a lot of hope in that and skill. So he was able to go off and do that. Then we get into an evaluation of, hey, is ours actually better than what's out there? Because usually the ones that are out there have lots of capabilities, and ours just is barely working. But a lot of times we have such strong technology group and such strong developers. We put a lot of faith in them to solve it and get to a place that is a better result than what we could have purchased off the shelf. So we've done that numerous times. On Big Hero 6, we wrote our own render, which was kind of a risky thing to do, but it gives you all the beautiful imagery of Zootopia and Moana and Big Hero 6 because we have full control over it. It was written by our developers and brings us fabulous capabilities. So it's always a balancing act of what solution we're going to use for any given problem.
Hey, how you doing, guys? Right here.
Oh, hey.
Here, first of all, Moana and Zootopia, two of the best animated films of 2016. So I just want to say congratulations to you guys on a terrific job. One of the things I've noticed that since the beginning of the 2010s, the Disney animated movies are becoming more and more visually stunning. That shot that we were talking about where the water opens up from Moana, probably one of the most iconic shots in the film. So I'm just wondering, do you guys always have a way, always are coming up with different ways and different techniques to try and push the boundaries of animation to almost, because the stuff that I saw in Moana almost confused it with actually being live action. So that's almost, so do you have different techniques to try and push the boundaries of between animation and actually real life?
Thank you so much, but yeah, our technical challenges really kind of come from storytelling needs. I worked on Frozen, I worked on Moana, and not one time did the director or head of story go like, what can y'all do? Because I'm going to build a story around that to show off. And they kind of come up with a story that moves them, that amazes people, that they want to touch people with, and then we just have to figure out how to do it. When we have a scene where the ocean opens like that, there's certain kind of storytelling aspects of it that you want it to be beautiful and kind of breathtaking. You don't want it to look like a scene from an earlier film. You really want it to be iconic. So everybody kind of gathers together both technically and creatively to kind of do something no one's seen before. And everything about in recent years, we're all pulling together to try to solve all these problems. So like when that ocean opening shot, there's not just like both of our directors, myself and my co-head of effects, there's Kyle, there's a production designer, there's a head of layout. They're all like sitting there looking at that shot, trying to get it improved. And it's got to be really good to get past all those odds.
One of the things we found is that, as Marlon talked about, the story demands are what are driving some of the really amazing visuals in the movie. And it's this film, because I'm in there early with the directors, hearing about the latest thoughts about what the story's going to become. I swear that on this movie, every time they added something new to the movie, it happened to be something that we didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
And I would hold my head, I guess, not roll my eyes, hold my head and say, oh no, another thing that we need to develop. An example, the Kakamora weren't in the movie at the start of the year that the movie came out. And we said, you want what? You want three huge barges with tons of these coconut guys running around? And that would have been a big challenge all in itself. And it was going to be under a very tight timeline because we only had about 6 to 8 months to make that happen. Usually we like that upfront time to figure out how we're going to do it, and then we kind of roll into production. Here, that aspect of figuring it out and doing it, we're right on top of each other in a way that wasn't always comfortable.
Yeah.
With the schedules we've been making lately, we always talk about the fact that it's, we're right up against the deadline in delivering these things, and it takes a lot of people spending overtime and working really hard to make it happen. And thankfully there's the passion amongst everybody that we work with to be able to make a film like this and have people enjoy it. And as I said, we love solving problems.
Yeah.
So just getting a little bit more time to solve those problems would make it awesome. but they all got done, and we are very, very proud of the movie. So thank you.
I think there was a question about front too.
So I'm a huge Frozen fan, and now Moana too, of course. And you said you worked on both Frozen and Moana. So just wondering if there were any animations or effects that you could reuse from Frozen into Moana.
It wasn't much because Frozen's pretty Nordic, and Moana is tropical. But one of the things, the technical challenges we had on Frozen was to do snow, and not to get too detailed, but we did come up with a solver to do very deep snow for Frozen, because most snow was actually people walking around in like 2 or 3 inch snow. And we had people getting buried in snow and a lot of things going on.
A clumpy material.
Yeah. So we created a solver called Matterhorn to do snow for Frozen, but they used it to make ice cream in Zootopia, and we used it to do sand in Moana. So there's certain technologies that just go from one film to another if we're lucky.
Yeah, we work hard to always be trying to move forward on each film, and even across film we work in a very collaborative way, so that a solution for one film, if it can be adjusted slightly and become the solution for the next film, that's obviously what we'd like to have happen. So
one of the things about having already made Frozen, because you had a character like Elsa who can, not giving anything away, shoot snow and ice out of her hands. So we actually had to work very closely with character animation to make Frozen, and those relationships were already really well established when we tried to make Te Ka and tried to do the ocean as a character, and they may have been harder to do if we hadn't made Frozen already.
Yeah, and even over the course of the film, those relationships improved. As Te Fiti comes back as an island at the end of the film, another spoiler alert. We were working on that literally weeks before the delivery of those shots, which were the last shots delivered in the film. And we really had kind of one shot at it. So everybody was there every day. We had a meeting every day to say, where are we? What do we need? What do we need to solve in what time frame to have all the other pieces come together? So thankfully, it did come together in a reasonable way.
Indeed.
Did you want Stella?
Well, he's got a mic for you.
Thank you.
I was wondering, is more technically difficult, the movement of human hair or water?
Well, it's hard to say. It's interesting because we have a proprietary solver for human hair as well. Yeah, one of the things they added for the amazing hair on these characters in our film is to simulate down to the coil level. So if you look back at older films where someone has very strongly curly hair, you'll sense that it's all in a tube that's banging up against another tube. If you look closely at the film, these are actual coils that wind together and catch and then slip off of each other in a way that's very different because we're able to, time has passed, we're able to apply more computing power to it, a bit more knowledge of writing simulators that are a bit more clever. So everybody in the whole industry, we are so super lucky at the Disney Corporation to have our sister divisions of ILM, Pixar, and there's a whole nother division, Disney Research, and we all talk all the time. So at the beginning, when we were going to do water, we knew that ILM had done amazing water, and Pixar had done Cars 2. ILM did Pacific Rim. So we all got together in a room and said, what did you guys do? What techniques did you use? And then that was a huge, great body of knowledge for us to start from. And then, of course, we always want to try and do a little bit better. That's one of the beauties of the industry in general. We all want to top each other by a little bit. So then we go back to our facility and then figure out what is going to come next, what's going to make it better, so that you guys can enjoy these films even more.
Our question is, what is the difference? Do you think differently about effects in animated movies like Moana and Frozen than you do in Lion King and Jungle Book when it comes to making it look real? Like, with the obvious difference being, like, obviously water's not a character inside of Jungle Book, but For an effects animator, is it any different how you think about it, or is it ultra reality, or is there some characterization to effects?
All of our effects. I mean, I'm flattered that someone thinks that it looks like reality, it looks like a live action film, but what we're going for is believability and kind of an artistic interpretation of it. So both as a hand-drawn effects artist and as a CG effects artist, I'm in support of production design, of kind of creating this an effect that fits into the world, the stylized world we're creating, and it's in support of the character animation because it always has to kind of like, it can't really upstage the character. It really needs to be in support of the character. So it's all about kind of storytelling. And if you go to Tahiti, which I did, but some other folks did, the water looks, or any place you've been that looks amazing. I mean, all of you've been someplace and you're like, oh my God, this is so nice, this is so beautiful. And you take a picture of it, and you look at your picture, it doesn't look nearly as good as it did when you were looking at it. Or it doesn't look nearly as good as it feels in your heart and in your mind. And not to get like too warm and fuzzy, but that's what we're trying to do with the water in Moana. We actually, you don't see through to it very much. We reflect more of the sky to make it more turquoise. So all the water and all of the effects in both Moana and almost any effect film I've ever worked on is trying to make it look like what you feel the effect should look like, how you remember fire behaving than necessarily how it really looks. So it's always an interpretation.
I would say in terms of the tools that we use, it can be driven either way. Our simulators give physically correct results and could be used to generate material for a live action film, and it would be very believable. It's usually after we generate it and what we do to it that makes it feel a little bit different and hopefully fits well into the style of our film. That's always our goal. So the tool sets are very, very similar. It's just the choices we make based on the style of our film. And if a director wanted a more realistic style for their film, that's a conversation we'd have and see what we could do about achieving that. So far that hasn't come up as wanting pure photorealism, but you never know because we really are a director-driven studio. We're trying to make sure that we are achieving whatever their goals are on a film.
Oh, yeah, question.
Are there any programs or effects you're currently trying to problem solve? Or any future films?
She was asking if there's effects challenges that we're trying to problem solve at present. Clouds and volumes are a really big deal on the next 2 films out that we're actually kind of working on. So those folks kind of really do really beautiful, believable, stylized clouds as we speak. So
there's also destruction. We're trying. We have the ability to destroy things on film, have them break up into pieces, but we're trying to get better at that for some upcoming films. Yes.
I'm sure you probably could have already heard me, right? But anyway, what we always see is the final render of film. It looks beautiful. So, can you give any idea, if you're animating at 24 frames per second, how long the average render time is per frame?
Yes, I can tell you exactly. It was a concern on the film. We wanted it to be 150 hours per film, and it ended up about 175. So this is per 175 hours if we use
Ladies
one
and gentlemen,
CPU.
boys and girls,
Although we use
you're
multiple
invited to join us in just 15 minutes for the ultimate fan street party, which will travel right down Mickey Avenue and through the heart of the D23 Expo. This special street party celebrates you, the ultimate Disney fan, with a live band and energetic dancers who join together with some of your favorite Disney pals and celebrity guests for the ultimate D23 Expo celebration. The fun begins in just 15 minutes. See you then.
Thinking about the computing problem, if we showed you a chart of how much computing time we've used on these films, back in the Tangled era it was down here, and then we move upward and upward with Big Hero 6, and then Moana's up here. So it's not one we want to continue. We're going to try and level out, but I think we hope you feel the richness. It takes a lot of computing horsepower to achieve that richness, but it's worth it, we think.
Hi, Harriet.
Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Harriet.
I have a question. Just wanted to say hi.
Well, good to see you.
Hey.
Is there anything in Moana you wish you could go back and fix? Like anything that you had to just like give up and say like fine, it's okay, and then like
Kyle.
Well, it's an interesting question because I think everybody that works on these films for this long and this hard has scenes they wish they could spend more time on. So, in the broad strokes, I'm so proud of how it came out. There isn't anything in the overall. There's just little small things that I'm sure would not bother anybody else. If I had the choice, I would go back and do it. But again, it's always that we spend a lot of time at the end of the film with the directors to say, what of what we've done would you like to have changed if we have any time? And usually there's only a tiny bit of time to go back and address 20, 30 shots for small fixes. So mine never make it on that list.
Yeah, there's nothing cringeworthy for me. I mean, there's always little things, because I think John Lasseter says our films are never finished, they're just released. And so there's always something, but and there's been past films where there's things I almost kind of cringe at when they go by, but there's nothing like that in Moana.
There are a couple scenes where the wakes are just faked. They weren't simulated because the boat's off in the distance, and I could tell. Let me go back. I think I have time for one more question. Oh. Catch us after. Okay.
I was just wondering if you guys use a system like Maya or something for your effects, or if Disney has their own.
Maya is used for most of the work in the studio, character animation, layout. In effects, we use Houdini. This is a package, another off-the-shelf package. We do have certain programs like Splash we talked about, Matterhorn, certain things we do, but most of our effects are done in Houdini. They have been for like the last almost a decade. We started off in Maya though, but we kind of transitioned.
Did you get it, Mike?
is that a bad?
Yeah, this will be the last one.
I was wondering, were you guys able to join the group that went to the island so that way you guys could see what they were inspired by to get them?
Not us. If I had 50 cents for every time someone said, you know, I took a photograph of that in G-Pics, or I've got some video you can look at to get that right, Marlon, I would go a cup of coffee right now.
I was lucky enough to go to Tahiti, Bora Bora, like weeks before I started at Disney. That was 21 years ago, but I still is pretty fresh in my mind, so I felt that was adequate, and I thought it was better for others who hadn't gone to see it to be able to take my place on that trip.
Yeah. I mean, all joking aside, though, I have gone on research trips, and I know our directors feel the same way. When people bring you into their home and show you their world, you really want to get it right. And I knew I looked at tons of photos and videos, and I knew how transformed by that trip Ron and John were. And we had folks come into our studio and talk to us about their culture. That you want this movie to entertain everybody, but you want to do right by people whose world it is you're trying to represent.
One of the very special things Disney chose to do is they translated the movie into Tahitian. It was a very, very big event there, and everybody came out. It's one of those languages that is dying away a bit, and they felt very, very special about that. And now they're actually I believe they're doing a second translation into one of the island languages because the reaction to the first was so special. So Disney doesn't want to, Disney always wants to reach out to people that were so great to us and provide them things when they're able to help us in such a great way make a movie like this. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of D23. Great meeting with you.